She was just the maid. Quiet. Invisible. The kind of person most people looked past without a second thought. Rosa moved through the halls of the winter estate, like a shadow. Early mornings, long days, no complaints. She never spoke unless spoken to, never raised her eyes, and never sat at the table when the others did. Most days, no one even noticed if she was there. But there was one person who did notice. Her, and not in a good way. Alexander Winters was the kind of man who turned heads everywhere he went. The billionaire owner of one of the largest tech companies in the country, he lived his life with order, precision, and no room for excuses. He was known for being cold, detached, and brutally efficient. Staff at his Chicago mansion called him Mr. Freeze, never to his face. Of course. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either, just sharp, businesslike, impatient, especially when it came to things that didn't make sense. So when he started noticing Rosa checking the fridge repeatedly, day after day, it didn't sit well with him. She never took anything. She never touched a bite of food. But several times a day, she'd open the stainless steel door slowly, stare inside for a few seconds, and close it again. Sometimes in the morning before breakfast was even served. Sometimes late afternoon, after her shift was mostly over. He'd catch it from the corner of his eye, her slim frame bent slightly forward, eyes scanning the shelves, as if she were searching for something specific. Then she'd close the door, and return to work like nothing happened. It irritated him. He hated things that didn't make sense. In his world, everything had a reason, a function. People didn't just stare into refrigerators unless they were trying to steal or sneak food they hadn't earned. He told himself maybe she was hungry. Maybe she was just lazy. Maybe she was planning to take leftovers home without permission. But Rosa never asked for anything. She never looked anyone in the eye. She just worked. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, everything boiled over. Alexander had just returned home early from a tense board meeting. A deal had fallen through. Millions lost in a matter of hours. He was in a mood, sharp and simmering. As he tossed his coat onto the entryway bench and loosened his tie, he heard a faint sound from the kitchen. Something metallic. He turned the corner and there she was again. Rosa, standing in front of the open fridge, her face bathed in its white glow. Her hand hovered near a container of soup. She wasn't touching it, just looking. "Excuse me," Alexander's voice sliced through the air like ice. Rosa jumped and closed the door immediately, stepping back as if caught in a crime. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked, his voice cold and controlled. I was just checking," she began, her voice barely audible. "Checking? For what? Leftovers to take home, or something to eat on my time?" His words were sharp, suspicious. "No, sir, I wasn't." She tried to explain, but he didn't let her finish. "You're done. Pack your things. I don't pay people to loiter around my kitchen like it's a public shelter." His voice never rose, but the finality in his tone hit harder than any shout. Rosa blinked hard, her lip trembling, but she didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply nodded, turned away, and disappeared down the hallway, toward the staff quarters. By dinner time, she was gone. The house settled into silence. The staff whispered quietly among themselves, but said nothing to him. Alexander went on with his evening like usual: email, calls, a glass of scotch. But something gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was more like confusion. Something didn't add up. If she was stealing, why hadn't she just taken something when she had the chance? And why the fridge? Why only stare? 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, as Alexander was finishing a call in the foyer, his longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Carter, cleared her throat gently beside him. "Sir, may I speak, if I may?" she asked cautiously. He gave a short nod. "It's about Rosa," she began. Alexander raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I saw her checking the fridge too, not just once. Many times. But she never took anything. She wasn't stealing." "Then what was she doing?" he asked flatly. Mrs. Carter hesitated. "She was checking expiry dates, sir. Only the expired food." Alexander stared at her. "Take some things that were past there. Tito-gurt bread. Some fruit. Not for herself. She gave them to the kids in her apartment building. There are 3 of them motherless. Their fathers drink. She feeds them with the food we were throwing away." He didn't respond. His face was unreadable. "She used her own money last week to buy them cough syrup," Carter added quietly. "She had a fever that day. Still came in. She didn't want to lose the job." The room felt colder than usual. Alexander blinked. His voice, when it came, was low. Why didn't she say anything? She didn't think you'd believe her, Mrs. Carter said gently. Most people don't believe girls like Rosa. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. He stood alone in the kitchen around midnight, the same fridge humming softly in front of him. The shelves were full. Too full. Containers, stacked with untouched food. Meals catered and forgotten. He opened one, checked the date. 2 days passed, still fine. He thought of 3 children hungry, alone, thought of Rosa walking out that night without a word. The man who built skyscrapers and negotiated billion-dollar contracts stood still in front of a fridge, unsure of how to fix something as simple and human as this. Then, just after noon, the next day, in a crumbling apartment building on the city's south side, there was a knock on Rosa's door. Her rent was due. She had $12 left. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. When she opened the door, her heart skipped a beat. Standing there, in a black coat, holding 2 brown paper bags, was Alexander Winters. And in that moment, everything began to change. Rosa stood frozen at the doorway, unsure if she was dreaming. She looked at Alexander's face, trying to read it, but it was softer than she remembered, less sharp around the eyes, less cold in the voice when he finally spoke. I need to talk, he said. Without a word, she stepped aside and let him in. Her tiny apartment smelled of damp walls and boiled rice. The paint was chipped, and the heater let out a soft wheeze but gave little warmth. There was a broken crib in the corner, a box of crackers on the counter, and 3 small coats hanging on rusty hooks. The place was small, barely enough for one person, yet Rosa had been caring for 3 children who weren't even her own. Alexander looked around, quietly taking it all in. He placed the paper bags on the table: milk, bread, fruit, soup, medicine, baby formula, and turned back to her. She was still standing near the door, hands tucked nervously behind her back. I was wrong, he said after a pause. About everything. Rosa blinked, unsure how to respond. I judged you without knowing anything about you, he continued. I fired you for something I didn't even understand. I didn't ask. I just assumed. Rosa lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. Most people do. He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. Carter told me everything. About the kids. About the food. About the medicine. His voice caught slightly, something unspoken hanging in the air. I didn't come here just to say sorry. I came because I think I've been living wrong. For a long time, she finally spoke up, her voice soft but steady. They're not my kids. Not really. Their mothers died last winter, 2 floors below mine. I used to help when I could. Then one night I heard them crying. They hadn't eaten all day. I started bringing home bread. Whatever was still good enough to chew. Alexander sat down slowly, rubbing his temples. You used your pay to feed them. I didn't have much, she said, but they had nothing. He closed his eyes. The silence felt heavier now, and for the first time, Rosa saw something different in him: guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was real. I'd like to help, he said finally. Not just today, not just with groceries. I have a foundation. We do charity work, but it's all from a distance. Numbers on a page. But you are doing it for real. I want you to be part of it. I want you to study. If you want, I'll sponsor you. You shouldn't have to carry all this alone. Rosa's hand covered her mouth. She didn't cry, but her body shook from the weight of it all. She wasn't used to kindness, especially not from men like him. She nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. Over the next few weeks, everything began to change, but not without struggle. Rosa started attending evening classes in social work, while helping Alexander's team set up a new food donation branch under his foundation. They called it the Second Shelf, where expired but edible food was collected from restaurants and distributed to families in need. At the mansion, staff noticed the change. The man once called Mr. Freeze was asking questions now, listening more. He walked through the kitchen once a week to check how much food was going to waste. And when one of the new maids broke a plate by accident, he simply told her to be careful and walked away. No anger, no lecture. But behind the progress, tension brewed. Board members at Alexander's company weren't thrilled about his growing interest in the foundation. It's a distraction, they said. The business is slipping. You're spending too much time on this charity. Alexander pushed back. Maybe the business needs to change too. That created new conflicts. Meetings grew tense. Investors whispered. One morning, his legal advisor told him bluntly, your shareholders won't support this direction. You'll lose votes at the next board meeting. Rosa heard about it and blamed herself. "You're risking your position because of me," she said one night after class. "I'm not," he replied. "I'm doing it because of me. You just reminded me who I used to be before the money got too loud." But things didn't slow down. Someone leaked Rosa's past to the media. Headline read, "Maid turned social worker. Billionaire's pet project raises eyebrows." Photos of her cracked shoes and peeling apartment doors spread online. Some people mocked. Others cheered. But Rosa was shaken. "I didn't ask for this," she told Alexander. "I never wanted to be a story." "You're not a story," he said. "You're the reason I'm writing a new one." Still, the pressure grew. Investors wanted him to cut funding to the new donation branches. The board issued a warning: either step back from the foundation or face a vote to remove him as CEO. For the first time in years, Alexander faced a decision he couldn't buy his way out of. He stood at the edge of the world he'd built, staring down the cost of doing the right thing. And deep down, Rosa knew whatever choice he made next would change both their lives forever. One cold evening, as Rosa walked back to her apartment, she saw a black car parked near the steps. The window rolled down. Alexander was inside. His expression was unreadable. "Get in," he said. Her heart raced as she climbed in beside him. The city lights blurred outside the window as they drove. "I have something to tell you," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, everything changes." Rosa turned to him slowly. "What do you mean?" He looked ahead, the weight of the moment in his eyes. "I made my decision." Rosa sat in the car, staring at Alexander's profile as the city lights flickered past. He didn't say anything for a moment, just kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, jaw clenched like he was holding something in. Finally, he pulled the car into a quiet parking lot next to an old community center. The building looked closed, dark except for a faint light glowing near the back door. "I'm stepping down," he said suddenly. Rosa turned to him, stunned. "From your company?" He nodded, still staring out the windshield. "I've spent years building something that doesn't feed anyone's hunger, doesn't heal anyone's pain, just numbers and growth. I thought it made me powerful. But now I realize it made me cold." He looked at her, his eyes softer than ever. "When I fired you, I thought I was protecting my world. But I was only proving how broken it really was." Rosa's throat tightened. "You don't have to do this because of me." "I'm not," he said quietly. "I'm doing it because I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to build something that actually matters." He unlocked the car and stepped out. Rosa followed. They walked to the back door, and he opened it to reveal a renovated kitchen, warm, bright, stocked with fresh food and volunteers wearing aprons. Shelves lined the walls, labeled with dates and categories. At the center stood a banner, the second shelf. No food wasted, no life ignored. Rosa stepped inside slowly, her eyes wide. "Is this?" Alexander nodded. "The first full-time food redistribution center. We've partnered with 50 restaurants and markets. Nothing goes to waste now, and starting next week, it'll offer free cooking classes, meal kits for single parents, and jobs for people who've been overlooked like you were." A soft voice behind them interrupted. "Miss Rosa." Rosa turned around. Liam, Daniela, and baby Mara stood at the door with their neighbor. Liam ran forward, hugging Rosa around the waist. "They told us this place has pancakes tomorrow," he said with a big smile. Rosa knelt, pulling them all into a hug, her heart full. She looked up at Alexander, tears in her eyes but a smile on her lips. "They won't go to bed hungry again." "Not on my watch," Alexander replied. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Rosa became the community center's director, guiding volunteers, organizing deliveries, and training young women in low-income neighborhoods. She didn't just run the place, she inspired it. Word spread quickly. Donations poured in. More centers opened in other cities. As for Alexander, he didn't vanish from the world of business. He used his influence to push for better food waste laws and helped launch a national movement to redirect surplus food to shelters and struggling families. Investors called him reckless at first. Some walked away, but others joined him, realizing that success wasn't just about wealth, it was about impact. One rainy afternoon, Rosa walked through the main kitchen with a clipboard in hand. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, her hair tied back. A little boy reached for a banana on the shelf, and she bent down to hand it to him with a smile. Alexander stood nearby, watching quietly. He didn't say much these days, he let the work speak for itself. But as Rosa approached, he handed her a folded paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A letter," he said. "From my mother's old journal. I found it last week in storage." She unfolded it and read the faded handwriting. "The world won't always notice the kind, but kindness always notices the world." Rosa smiled, tears rising. "She would have been proud of you." "No," Alexander said gently. "She would have been proud of you." That night, as the last family left with warm meals in hand and the kitchen lights dimmed, Rosa stood at the doorway and looked out at the quiet street. The wind was cold, but her heart was warm. She'd once been fired for checking a fridge. Now, she opened doors that fed hundreds. And in that journey, a billionaire found his purpose not in power, not in numbers, but in one quiet maid who saw hunger and chose not to look away. Because sometimes, it takes just one small act of compassion to change everything.